Hey.
Hey, what are we talking about today?
We're off center. Let's get it centered. This is kind of neat, actually, today. Look at this thing that I have. You see this thing?
Look at that thing.
Let's make it more. Let's just embrace the thing. There we go.
We both got a thing now.
Both the things. We'll touch things.
There we go.
Okay, there we go. All right, now we can start. This is kind of a fun one. Trust Love Podcast is talking about what it means and what it involves with, and common arguments against trusting love. Ooh, what do you have to say about that, Kiki?
This is a good one.
Yeah, I'm excited we're doing this.
This is really good. So let's talk about often interpretations of what trusting love is like kind of misidentified as.
Cool.
So trusting love could feel like, oh, trust everything, and you know, you don't have to worry about a thing, just trust everything, and you know, lolly 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 doody 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 la 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 la, you know, like, ooh, positivity, yeah.
Yeah.
That's my way of explaining that.
I think that fits, and I've had, you know, debates with people on even just positive thinking, you know, and there's a very legitimate debate for this kind of stuff, and I get it, and I totally understand where it comes from, where like you can't just surrender to love, because then you find yourself in situations where, you know, if you just trust everybody all the time, and if you're just loving everybody all the time, then what about people who really do have maybe malicious intentions? You know, if you've come across someone like that, then you're vulnerable and in danger.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's
Absolutely.
So I totally understand the perspective, and there's definitely some
Validity
to it. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it is a misconception, and the truth of trusting love is actually trusting your own self to build the boundaries that are necessary, and trusting yourself to say no when something is not in alignment for you and when it's not honoring yourself. Trusting yourself to know when something is good for you or bad for you. Trusting your intuition in moments where you know, where you don't feel safe or something like that, and like really trusting that, and not being like, oh, well, I trust love and everything's gonna be all right, you know. Trusting love is also meaning like trusting yourself, and being able to create those boundaries in moments where they're needed, and to like build that trust within yourself. Yeah.
So beautiful. So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is really it comes down to the love that you trust is the love for yourself. So the more deeply you love yourself, the more, one thing that happens is you'll do things that take care of yourself. You know, you'll do things that take care of yourself, and don't allow things to happen to you that aren't honorable or aren't safe or disrespectful, you know, and things like that. There's a degree where you have a relationship with all the movements inside yourself that can indicate, or induce decision making. You know, we could talk about that as far as like, there's the phrase like trust your gut, you know, or listen to your gut. You know, that's real. That's like your body reacts to life experiences to tell you things. You know, like even our senses, like when we smell something foul, it smells foul to us because it's not good for us to consume. You know, if we smell rotting meat and it smells horrible, we're appalled, we can't even go near it. That's our senses protecting us from, you know, saying, oh, that's something that I can eat. I'm going to put that in my body and eat it. I'm very hungry. That's our body protecting us. And that works across the board with any situation, in all kinds of different ways. So if I'm in a scenario and this person invites me to go somewhere with them, and then I listen to my body, and my body's in some way, you know, all of a sudden my gut, you know, tightens up inside, or my heart starts pounding and it just doesn't feel right, then that's something to really pay attention to. Just something before I let you, you know, hear your perspective on this, I just want to add is we can't have this conversation without talking about irrational
You read my mind.
fear or anxiety or things like that. Do you want to pick up there?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you literally read my mind. So what I was gonna say is that like part of this, you know, you can trust your intuition and you can trust like your senses and your gut. However, there'll be moments where even like in our conditioning, you know, so there's moments where like with a certain sound, let's say, a sound that we heard when we were a child, and we have that sound associated with a traumatic event. Every time we hear that sound, we're gonna get triggered, and we're not gonna wanna like, you know, involve ourselves with that sound. Yeah. So that's just an example, but there's like many different areas in our lives where we may be controlled by our past conditioning and past traumas. And so I think that's something to really become aware of, and to see like, is this a rational fear, or is this like stemming from trauma from a childhood? And then also, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so like fears and all of that stuff. So discerning what fear or what indication is like an intuition or a knowing to not go do that thing. Or is this fear coming up because it's something that's like really good for you and it's gonna help you grow, and you're a little like intimidated by it? Yeah. And these two things are like big differences, and how to understand which is which in the body is really important. So like for me, for example, I see like an awesome woman, she's great, she's really like in her power, and I get intimidated and fearful, and I don't want to go like talk to her or something. So that's an indication for me, and what I've been practicing is like diving into those types of fears. Yeah. So like that's something I know that will only lead to connection and growth and love. So like is myself blocking myself because of fear in that way, and blocking myself from growth? That's something to dive into. Whereas like I'm going somewhere by myself and I get a feeling of like I shouldn't go there, and there may not even be like any specific reason for it. Yeah. Can you trust that, and can you just be like, no, yeah. I'm getting like a lot of anxiety right now, and I don't know why, but I'm gonna listen to that. And then there's also like the anxiety of being social. So there's like a lot of different things that we can touch on here, and how to discern what's what. Yeah, I have some pretty wonderful insight that I've experienced recently on this, is that true intuition isn't really emotional. And the emotional feelings are usually the irrational ones. So what I'm finding, at least within myself, is that when I have like anxiety or fear from something, usually that's something that I can go into, and because it's an opportunity to work through whatever that is, and it's based on, like you were saying, a conditioning from the past. That's what I've discovered. But I've noticed with, at least, again, I can only speak for myself, but my own intuition that's telling me, and this is one of the reasons we don't listen to our intuition, is because it's not emotional. We listen to our emotionals because they make a lot of noise, you know, and they feel and they hurt, and like we really are with them. But I feel that the service of emotions aren't to guide us in what to do, but they're to guide us to what to release. And then our intuition is a little different. It's a quieter voice that says, you know, I don't think so. You know, I don't think that's a good idea. Again, this is how it shows up for me, is like, I don't know why, but I don't want to go over there. You know, somebody says, hey, let's go to that restaurant over there, and for some reason I'm like just not in the mood for that restaurant today. That's something that I need to trust. Yeah, it's very small, but for some reason I don't really want to go there.
And if it's like a definitive, strong kind of thing, again, it's not. There's no emotion connected with it, but it's like I don't know why I just do not want to go to that place today.
Yeah.
And then that's something for me to listen to. Is this making sense?
Yeah, so let me just respond and reflect with what you just said.
Yeah.
So emotions are usually indicators of where there's like fear or anxieties to actually like go towards. So when like an emotion comes up, it's usually there for us to look at like where the work is.
Yes.
Rather than be like, oh, this is my intuition and I shouldn't do this, or like this person's a bad person because my emotions are telling me so.
Yeah.
You know, when anything becomes emotional, it's an opportunity for growth usually.
Yeah.
It's like spirit kind of showing you where there's room to grow.
Yeah.
I think for myself, I can also testify to that as well. Yeah, and that's usually what comes up for me. I'll have like an emotion toward someone or something, and that's what I've been working on is like, okay.
Yeah.
I can really see too clearly that like, this thing is because I'm scared to grow. And why am I scared to grow? Because I'm scared to like step into my power.
Exactly.
And this is really where that's coming from.
Yeah.
And so I can see underneath the fear and anxiety that this was going to lead to growth. Whereas when something comes up, like with your example of not wanting to go to a restaurant, like I usually never care about that.
Never.
You know, like I don't really care. Even if I don't want to go there, like whatever, let's go. You know,
Yeah,
if you have a strong feeling towards something like that, that's a really great indicator.
Yeah, and I say, are you finished? I'd say especially if it's irrational, in the sense if not with emotions. It's different with emotions. This is with the actual intuition that we can trust. If it seems irrational, all the more we should trust it. If that makes sense, because it's coming up and it like doesn't make sense. That's like kind of how spirit works, because we don't know. It's not going to make sense, because what it would make sense to or not make sense to is the mind. And the mind's looking at it and says, well, we go to that place all the time and it's great. We've been there. We haven't been there in a month and it would be nice to go. They have great food. You know what I mean? The service is really good. There's no reason not to go over there. But something inside that's again, a little quiet, you know, is saying definitely not a good idea to go over there. Those are really ones that we should listen to. And this is what I'm really discovering through practice. This isn't like something that I'm coming up with and like logically, because it's not logical. This is for me is experiential. This is something that I'm noticing. And then when I perform actions based on emotions, because it's actually clear even in psychology. I think David Hawkins said some things about this. Maybe not. I don't remember if it was him, but I've heard this before in this world where emotions are a distortion in the mind, and they actually warp the lens of perception so that it's unclear. However, they do exist. It's almost like our karma. The way our karma shows up is as emotion, right? Where our wounds show up as emotion, where we're damaged, where we have fixed, rigid belief systems. That's where emotions show up, and they're meant to show us things that we need to release.
Right, and they're absolutely meant to be felt. I think emotions become more of a distortion when you don't allow yourself to feel them and experience what's coming up without attachment. And so it's actually like, it's almost like more attachment when you don't allow yourself to feel the emotions, because you're attached to like not allowing yourself to feel them. And so now you're like burying them deep, and they become more of like a distortion of your perception, because you have that within you and you're viewing everything through that lens of what you're not releasing. And so your whole like reality can become distorted when you're holding on to these emotions that are causing you all this turmoil inside, but you're not allowing yourself to be like, it's the emotion that's causing turmoil. When you push it down, it just becomes your reality. And that's why it's so important when emotion comes up, like let me really feel this, let me experience this so I can release it without any attachment there. You know, you just allow yourself to feel it, to release it, and then you can come back to that clearness, you know, and learn something about yourself, and even like become closer with your true self through like holding yourself through that experience.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's like, and it circles back to loving yourself. You know, if an aspect of your being shows up and you, like the other end of attachment is aversion, is to repel or to push it away. If you do that, you're not honoring a part of you. You know, there's all this stuff that's stuck inside, even though like we want to release it and be free from it, pushing it away actually keeps it around.
Right.
Which is kind of ironic, but that's the reality of it. And like you're saying, the only way to really fully resolve something that's been stuck or is stuck is to just let it really show you everything about itself. Let it tell you about itself, you know. And the more we sit with, let's say it's grief, you know, the more we sit with the grief, why, or not even why, just allow it.
Yeah.
Just let it just sit there in the grief, and it'll teach you so much. And then when it's ready, it'll go on its own. We don't have to like do anything. We don't have to like say, oh well, I gotta go and like, I feel better when, you know, I go do artwork when I'm grieving, and that's okay, but that's running from it and distracting yourself and focusing on something. You're focusing your mind on something else when this other thing's over here saying, hey, I'm over here, and you're like, nope, I'm here doing my thing. You know, that's a way of pushing it away and something to be really mindful of. And this is a delicate thing to talk about too, because so much of, you know, just talking about art, so much art is fueled by emotion, right? And that's something that we actually appreciate about art. So it's important to like, if we're gonna do something like this, I'm gonna continue with the example of art because it feels good. If we're gonna do that, it's not about, you can still do it and have it present and let the the grief express itself on the canvas. You know, I feel like, oh my God, that's awesome. Cool, we'll go say hi.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. If we're gonna do that, you know, it's a way of not running from it, but it's channeling it. So I'm gonna channel this emotion of grief or whatever that I'm feeling onto this paint canvas, and it's actually gonna help other people too. That's a beautiful way to allow and be authentic with your feelings. Again, if I'm choosing art to distract myself from the feeling, then it's a different story. Right. It's a very subtle difference, right?
Right, and I think what it comes down to is like expression of whatever you're moving through is going to feel like a release. You're going to feel the emotion as you're creating rather than like distracting yourself and denying yourself that feeling. So like, is your art coming from that emotion where you're like expressing it and releasing it and playing with it? And same thing with like movement. I oftentimes use movement to actually like bring the emotion up so I can feel it more. Whereas if I was using emotion to distract myself and dilute the emotion, I would just be like,
dance.
There's a big difference. Yeah. And something with emotions too is that they're often indicators of it's like, okay, I'm experiencing this emotion right now. Where is this coming up in like my day-to-day life? And how is like this emotion, I guess like it'll show you roots of the emotion. You know what I mean? This emotion is coming up for a reason to expose to you conditions and that you're probably like reacting to, and like it's continual, you know. So when you actually like look at it and allow it to teach you something and allow yourself to feel it, it can show you different areas of your life that you're actually like responding from this emotion, and where it's like really affecting your life negatively, where it's like coming up in habits and stuff like that, you know. And when you can actually allow yourself to feel it and experience it and learn from it, allow it to be what it is, it can teach you so much, and you can actually truly release it from your life, and you're no longer like, for example, if I have like a bad relationship with, or a bad like taste in my mouth or resentment towards men in general, I'm going to treat all men a certain type of way until I allow that like emotion to come up and really teach me something and look at it and see why it is I have a resentment towards men. And then I can actually work on releasing that resentment rather than just stuffing the emotion down and constantly having these habitual thoughts, negative thoughts towards men. That's just an example, but it's something that's like in a lot of women and men is like this, you know,
resentment towards each other.
Yeah, and women for sure. I know.
Sure, men and men. It's across the board. You know? Men and dogs. You know, it's across. It's across the board. I love what you're bringing up here because I could speak from this too. It's kind of evidence that you're that you're really with something is when you get these little flashes and waves of memory coming through, because that's what the energy is. The energy is something that you've actually chosen to carry around throughout your life. And I just did this the other day, and it was so potent. I was experiencing some anxieties and some fear and stuff like that, and doing exactly what you were just saying, but like really like genuinely allowing it to be there and really feeling it, you know, because we run from our feelings so often, especially men and fear. You know, we run from that, and it's like because we want to be fearless and protectors and that kind of thing that's within us, you know. And so being really vulnerable in that way and really accepting of what's showing up for you as you sit. I'm just sitting there, just not even doing anything. Again, just allowing the energy to be felt in the whole body and seeing where it's felt in the body. These little memories come up, and it's like, okay, when I was 16, this happened, and man, was that scary. That's the same energy. And then, oh my God, when I was 12, this happened, and man, was that scary too. Oh my God. And then, oh, that year when I was 12, so many things happened that were fearful, and you just keep going back and back and back, and then it's like, wow, I'm 5 years old, and my dad, smacked me on the butt, or whatever it was. And it's like, wow, that was like maybe the origin of that. And then who knows, it may go even deeper than that. It may go into other lives. It might go into, it might even go into like, this is a hereditary thing. And like, it's just so profound and amazing when we do this kind of work in this way, the depth of release that we can come to, and like we talk about with our communication stuff, when you're done with the situation, you're done because you're euphoric and you feel amazing. You feel like beautiful. And in one moment, you're getting consumed by fear and anxiety. And because you show up in a loving way for yourself and allow and accept the feeling to be there, 5 minutes later, you feel bliss because you're free again.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and for me, like what you were saying with the different memories showing up younger and younger, you can also notice these, I feel, these patterns and conditions in your parents, and be like, wow, okay, I can see how like they have that within them as well. And this comes back to just like as we are becoming aware of these things within ourselves and releasing them and doing the work, we're also allowing them just simultaneously to release that and to shift and create huge change for the generations before and after. And it really is so connected.
Totally.
Yeah. And to also go back to like the beginning of this, of like trust love and like what that really means. And just connecting with like, okay, when I truly started to like trust love, trust God, and trust myself, what were some shifts that took place in my life?
Yeah.
Just asking myself that question. And when I sit with that, I mean, boundaries were a huge thing. I started like really honoring myself in that way. Like, and that meant like, honoring my energy by creating boundaries and not over exuding my energy to anyone. And really taking time to go inward, time for myself, as well as like being able to like say no. And I was a big people pleaser, and this is something that I'm still working on, is I know they're biting.
It's a good one.
Something I'm still working on is like really being able to communicate clearly without fear of hurting people. It's something that I'm working on currently.
Yeah, that's can you backtrack for me?
Yeah, so the question is when you began to trust God, and really start to trust yourself, what are some big shifts that started to take place in your life? Or what were the first few things that really had to shift so that you could honor yourself and begin to trust love?
Yeah.
Truly.
It's awesome because it proves itself to be a reality. in your life, in my life. It has done so. It, like when you really show up that way, let's just talk about trusting love. Well, what does that mean? It means I love myself and I listen to my needs and I express those needs. When we do that, the question of how does that lead us in our life? How does that it opens up new pathways for us and where they lead. I want to mention that this is important to look at all the time in your life. When you're motivated by this feeling, expression, or desire, where does it take you and what are your experiences like? Right? So when I follow lust, when I follow lust and say I'm horny, I'm gonna go have sex with somebody. What kind of experiences do you have? You know what I mean? To look at this, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm not saying do or do not do that. I'm saying pay attention. When you're motivated by certain things, where does it lead you in your life? And now when I'm motivated in loving myself all the time, every day, that I make sure all of my decisions that I make are to serve my life and make a better life for myself always, and to grow continually towards greater living for me, or greater understanding of my life, greater understanding of reality, greater relationships, or just honoring myself. And you could focus on specific things. Like right now for me, like speaking up and listening to my inner voice are like two things. That's what I'm really focused on right now. We have our whole lives to work on this stuff, so we don't need to like do everything all the time. If you just focus on speaking up, just speaking up when you're feeling something, it can be really beautiful. And for me, when I started to say, you know what, I'm done people pleasing and compromising during disagreements. When I feel something, I can, for me, it's what it took first before doing that was being able to express myself calmly and in a way that was respectful towards the other person. That was the first work that I had to do, because it's gonna be harder for people to meet me in the way that I want to be met if I'm getting all excited and aggressive.
Exactly.
So that was the first work to do, is to make sure that I'm serving others first and giving them what I want, and then I'm offering myself in the way that I want to be received. Do unto others as you wish to be done unto you. So that was the first thing that for me had to happen, and that I first worked on. And then from that, once I'm able to, express myself, that's a whole journey in itself. But once I'm able to express myself gently but authentically at the same time, then major life shifts happen. You start to drift towards certain people and away from other people. You start to do different things with your time. Maybe you get a new job. Maybe you start a new hobby. Maybe you realized that you've had this gift that's been dormant within you for 10 years, that it was the most important thing to you when you were 15 years old, and then for some reason it's not part of your life anymore, and then for some reason it's coming up again and you're feeling really good doing it. Listening to that and honoring that, it opens up pathways that lead to your destiny, or the pathway of your destiny, of why you're here. You're meant to be here for certain reasons, to interact with certain people, to influence, to grow, to expand, to create, to birth new generations into the world. Whatever your life's purpose is, it doesn't align until you really start loving yourself. And then you're kind of wandering around on these other paths that they're going in the same direction as you would, but they're all over the place. You know what I mean? And they're not as closely connected with your purpose, and it's a little bit distorted.
And I find life will keep on trying to redirect you back onto your path until you get there. And sometimes life will just knock you down, punch you in the face, push you somewhere, until you kind of get back onto your into alignment in a way. So
absolutely.
And something too that's coming through with trusting love and trusting God is those super small moments where things are not going the way that you planned, or not going exactly the way that you wanted, or whatever it is. That's a great moment to really practice trusting God and trusting love, even in the most small ways. You know, I find oftentimes people can go like in a very negative direction, like relate to some, like this is just a silly example, but it's a small thing that's like a small example that can be related to bigger examples. We were like late. We went to the wrong area to go somewhere for like a show in the city when just now when I went with Todd.
Oh yeah.
And Todd was like freaking out. He's like, we're not gonna make it in. Like he was like so upset. We traveled all the way to the city. We're not gonna make it. And I'm like, everything's gonna be fine. I like call up the other place. And I was just like, hey, we're running a little late. We went to the wrong place. And they're like, oh, no problem. Come on. You know, but he like really freaked out.
Oh yeah.
And like if you allow that freak out, that like negative spiral to get to you, like you could have ruined like the whole day when really like everything was fine and you could just go to the other location.
Right.
You know, that's like a really small example, but when like some big shifts take place in your life like that, like can you return to a peaceful state within yourself and trust that all is unfolding as it should be?
Yeah.
So that's like another big one that I think I was able to that I stepped into when I started doing this, that made huge profound shifts in my life, is to like, it's you're like viewing things in a positive way, but you're viewing it in like an honest way of like everything's unfolding exactly as it should be, and trusting that, like, let's say if we went all the way to the city and didn't get into that show, that we weren't supposed to be there anyway.
Right.
You know, if we didn't get in, then it's fine, and we're here together, and that's all that matters, and let's like make the best out of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's like a small example, but like also your trip that you just went on, you know, it's like a contradiction because you're not like, in a way you were like, I didn't listen to myself and I shouldn't have gone.
Yeah.
But that's why I went, so that I could learn that and embody that. So I was supposed to go. You know, it's just like a huge, beautiful contradiction, but being able to look at everything in that way. That like everything is truly unfolding the way that it's supposed to be. And that doesn't mean not taking action towards things that you believe in, or not doing something that you don't want to do. That's all a part of it. It's trusting yourself, but also trusting everything that comes up within that, and then making decisions that are based on, you know, truth for you.
Yeah.
And
and again, within the realm of self-love, I think is really a great place to focus, you know, because self-love includes others. You know, it's not selfishness, it's not greed. You know, like I'm just trying to define the term self-love clearly in saying, so let's really look at it and say, if I'm saying I love myself, does that mean I only make sure that, you know, I have my needs met, or, you know, because I'm just seeing where it could be maybe interpreted as, again, things like greed or selfishness, self-love, but it's actually quite the opposite, because self-love includes everybody else, because anyone who shows up in your life, whether you like it or not, is in service to your life. Because this path, and this is something that's gets clearer and clearer for me every day, is that everything that shows up for me is really showing up for a reason. And all the decisions that I have to make in my life are coming up for a reason, and to help me to listen to that true voice inside, that again, it exists beyond emotion, it's transcendent of emotion, it's clear, and it's always has the best interest of everybody involved.
Right. And similar to what you were saying before, like living out your life's purpose, it's only when we choose to love ourselves and honor ourselves that we can truly align with our life's purpose. And when we align with our life's purpose, it's not just for us, it's for everybody. You know, like we really all hold like a great purpose, and it's not just for ourselves, it's really in service to everyone around us. And so when we choose to love ourselves, we're really choosing to show up for everybody and the earth and all that is. Really, we're choosing to listen.
Beautiful. And when you love yourself, your actions, like, they come out a certain way. Like what I was saying before about, like, expressing my needs aggressively. The reason that was happening is because it was hard for me to express my needs in general, and I was afraid to express my needs. So that aggression was actually an expression of fear inside of not being heard, or fear of being like rejected for my needs, or saying my needs aren't valid or worthy. You know what I mean? The fears of those things towards expressing myself was the reason that I expressed myself in certain ways. Frustrated, or I would wait too long to express, and then it would be expressed in an inappropriate way at an inappropriate time. You know what I mean? But if you love yourself every instant and honor yourself every instant, there's a few things that happen. One, you're not capable anymore of expressing through that aggressiveness anymore, because it's not there. If it's not there, it's not going to happen.
Right.
It's like almost, I remember I was listening to Krishnamurti talking, and what they were discussing was love and hate. And what they came to was saying, when love truly exists, hate truly does not exist. And when hate exists, love truly does not exist. So they're completely independent of each other. And if one is there, the other one, it's impossible for it to be there. So if there's hate inside, which is associated with fear and these other things and separation, if it's there, it's impossible for love to be there.
Wow.
And if love is there, it's impossible for the other stuff to be there. So this is something we can trust.
Yes, and you can see this come out in the way that you perceive the world around you. And this is another way of like looking at self-love and the importance of it is looking at everything as a projection of what's going on within you, right? So if we only have hate for ourselves, we're going to project that onto the world that we see around us.
Right.
And we're going to either like hate everyone, or
hate everyone that reminds us of ourselves.
Something like that. There's going to be hate in the way that you perceive the world. So when we choose to love ourselves, we're going to perceive the world around us and the people around us in a lovely way. And that just shows the importance of self-love as well.
Yeah. And I like this because we're learning what it really means. And if like love feels good even when it's difficult. Love feels good all the time.
Yeah, it could be like one of the most difficult things that you've ever gone through.
Yeah.
To truly unconditionally love. Like love will show you the aspects of yourself that you've been pushing down, that you've been hiding, that you've been hating.
Yeah.
That's what love is here to do. Like true love isn't just like, oh, everything's great. True love is like, here's the hard, dark shit, and now we're gonna love it.
Yeah.
We're gonna love that too. And that doesn't mean like being really like joyful about it. Like however way that like you're gonna love it is how you'll love it, and that might be like a lot of grief, that might be whatever you have to go through to be able to like really show up for those aspects of yourself and each other. And unconditionally loving someone else too is like really supporting their freedom, and that might look like you finding someone else and being with someone else, and me, like it's not gonna feel good, but if I am truly showing up and truly loving you, I'll be able to support that. And maybe I'll be like crying, but I'll be able to support that,
Right.
Yeah, that's love. And it's going to feel good no matter what, because I'm honoring you, because I love you,
And you'll be honoring yourself too, because if you realize what you'd be doing otherwise, if you're like mad at me, or if you're like, if you start, trying to make me feel guilty or something like that, you know what I mean? That's you're drinking your own poison,
right?
You know what I mean? Because it's inside of you, and that's only gonna, in the moment it's not gonna feel good, and then again, like we were just saying too, it's gonna attract more of that into your life, as where if I really if I really sit with aligning with all the whole essence of love, then like Kiki said, the most challenging thing that you go through in your life, even while it's happening, even during the process, let's say it's grieving, it'll have this underlying essence of like euphoria is really the only word that I have to describe it, because it's not going to be like joyful. It may get to that point where even when you struggle, it's joyful. It may get to that point. It may show up in that way for you, because I have experienced that before. I was like, wow, this is the hardest thing I've ever did. This is awesome.
Me too.
You know,
yeah,
I've definitely have experienced that. So that's something that might grow into that. But if this is something that's new, I can definitely say you might feel like you're working, but the more you like really surrender and trust love, the more like you're like, oh, okay, you have this breath to it, you have this openness to whatever you're going through, and despite what's involved with it, there's like such a beauty there that can't be experienced otherwise. And these are ways that we can know what we're aligned with, because we have to have build relationships with these aspects of experiencing. We have to build a relationship with hate, and we have to build a relationship with love, so we can get to know them, so that when they show up, we can say, this is where I want to stay, or I'm gonna go back over there. You know, if hate shows up for me, how can I shift over into love? And if love shows up, what's necessary for me to really remain there as different things come in and out of my life and change. What are ways that I can remain in this position where I'm clearly perceiving things in a way that's aligned with loving myself.
And the more we practice aligning with ourself, the more we live in this trust-love state, in this loving, trustful state, the more that it becomes easier and easier to really honor ourselves and show up for ourselves and each other and live in that space. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to sum it up? Wrap it up?
You want to do a wrap up?
We do.
Yeah, okay. So, I guess, is anything present for you in rapping? No. I can open it up if...
Yeah, you can.
Okay. So, we talked about in the beginning, like, common arguments towards trusting love. Things that like the mind is going to create stuff to keep you from really surrendering to love. It's going to create all kinds of justifications of like, I won't be safe if I trust love, or I won't make decisions that are rational if I just trust love and surrender, or like I'd be in my own delusional little bubble that everything's okay when it might not be.
Right.
These are common arguments that the mind is going to make to keep you from surrendering and trusting love, but it's actually quite opposite, because the love state is clear in perceiving everything that's going on, and the emotional state is not clear. It's distorted in perceiving everything that's going on. So that's something that's really important, and that's why we can trust love, is because it's completely centered and never moves from clarity and reality. Right? So the essence of that, again, is kind of rooted in listening to our own body, and even listening to our mind, even listening to, listening to without believing the stories that come up in the mind, letting the stories kind of like allowing them to be there. And if they want to show up, they're showing up because they want to show you something. A baby cries because it wants you to know something. It wants you to know something that it's going through, but it doesn't know how to tell you. It's like another language. When some kind of story shows up in your mind, like let's say it's a story of fear, if it shows up, the story may or may not be real, but it's showing up because it wants to tell you something about what's going on. There's this presence inside of you that's arising, and it's making itself known. So to meet that and observe it, and just observe it. It doesn't take any more work than that. Just observe and watch it happen, and stay centered in your silent space within. Watch it all go down. Watch it all happen, and you'll have revelation after revelation after revelation. And you'll sit in one moment. You'll sit and contemplate for 15 minutes, and you'll have 10 times through that 15 minutes, you'll be like, wow. Oh my God, that happened. That's why this happened. Oh, and it'll just be this flow that is the process of releasing. And it's effortless. All you do is enter silence, which is the same thing as saying entering love. And just be there and watch it all happen. And you'll act, and you'll speak, and you'll interact, and you'll grow. And you'll make choices, you'll make decisions clearly and spontaneously in every moment. And because it's all aligned with this state of love, then you open up to the whole world in the way that you're meant to. Anything else, Mama?
Yeah. I think it's important in these moments that we're speaking about, when whatever it is arises, to not become absorbed in the mind. And this is pretty much what you were saying, you stay in that centered space. You're not becoming absorbed in the mind. You're just being the witness of the mind and what's moving through. And it's when we become absorbed is when we kind of like allow ourselves to walk into the illusion and get blinded, and this is when we get confused, and this is when like anxiety really like rises, or fear really rises up, is when we say yes to the story that our mind is making up, when we choose to believe it. And so we always come back to awareness, but awareness is really key in all of this. It's like so important to build awareness, because awareness is pretty much love too. Like when we really become aware of how our minds works, then we get to choose whether we are choosing fear or love. Before we build awareness, there's not actually any choice. We may think that we're making choices, but really we are absorbed in whatever condition and habit it is that we constantly are making without even a conscious choice. And so building this awareness allows us to cultivate a loving relationship with life. And yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
That really hit. Thank you. All right, I think that was a good wrap up. We didn't go we didn't extend too much on that one. Normally we do.
That's perfect.
Oftentimes we do. Should we do a little plug here for our merch?
Yeah, we just started creating Trust Love t-shirts, bathing suits, bras, sweatshirts. They all have Trust Love in the front of them, and then all on the back in little letters is All Is One. They're really cute and
just
made with love.
Sorry.
And we'll post our website, our Shopify, in the link below here if you're interested in buying any merch.
Yeah, and keep checking it out, because we're just getting started designing and coming up with we're pulling some gems from some of our talks, I think, and we're gonna print them on some shirts so we can share, some of the stuff that comes through is so beautiful and so potent, and we grow and we just want to spread it all over the place. So check in with it. Thank you in advance for any support, even if it's just a look. We're really grateful for you guys coming and showing up and listening to us, and if you feel guided to support us a little more with purchasing some merch from us, we're just so tremendously grateful for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being you. May you really find that still space of love within yourself, and be content as you are, exactly as you are right now. There's nothing that you have to do, change, or be to love. Thank you.